The alarm clock buzzed at 5:30 a.m. just like every other morning. Maya rolled over in her tiny bed and stared at the cracked ceiling of her studio apartment. The paint was peeling in the corner, and she could hear her neighbor's TV through the thin walls. But she didn't complain. This little place was hers, and she had worked hard to keep it. Maya had been living in this same apartment for 3 years. It wasn't much to look at, just one room with a small kitchen area and a bathroom that barely fit a shower. The rent took up most of her paycheck, but it was better than the group homes she grew up in. At least here, nobody could tell her what to do or when to go to bed. She got dressed in her uniform, a simple blue dress with a white apron that had seen better days. The dress was getting loose around her waist because she often skipped meals to save money. But she always made sure her uniform was clean and pressed. Maya believed that looking professional was important, even if you were just serving coffee and eggs. The walk to Tony's diner took 15 minutes. Maya liked this time in the morning when the streets were quiet and the air was fresh. She would think about her day ahead and sometimes dream about what life might be like if things were different. But she never let herself dream for too long. Dreams didn't pay the bills. Tony's diner had been around for 40 years. The red vinyl seats were worn and patched with tape, and the floor tiles were faded and chipped. But the food was good and cheap, and the coffee was strong. Working people came here before their shifts. Families came for Sunday breakfast, and late-night workers stopped by for pie and coffee. Maya unlocked the front door and turned on the lights. She had keys because she was always the first one there. She liked the quiet time before the day started, when she could set up the tables and prepare for the rush. She brewed the first pot of coffee and checked that everything was ready. Tony arrived an hour later, already grumbling about the morning, on traffic. He was a big man in his 60s with gray hair and kind eyes behind thick glasses. He had owned the diner since he was young, and it showed in every corner of the place. Tony treated his employees well, even though business wasn't always good. "Morning, Maya," he called from the kitchen. "How's my best waitress today?" Maya smiled as she tied her apron. Tony always said that, even though there were 4 other waitresses who worked different shifts. He made everyone feel special, which was one of the reasons Maya loved working here. The morning rush started at 7. Construction workers ordered big breakfasts with extra coffee. Office workers grabbed quick meals before catching the bus downtown. Maya moved between tables with practiced ease, remembering who wanted their eggs over easy and who always asked for extra hot sauce. She had a gift for remembering details about her customers. Mrs. Chen always ordered tea instead of coffee because it was better for her stomach. Danny, the young father, liked his pancakes cut up already because he was always rushing to drop his kids at school. The businessman in the corner booth always left exactly a 20% tip and never looked up from his phone. Maya enjoyed taking care of people. It made her feel useful and needed. She had grown up in places where nobody really cared about her comfort or happiness. So now, when she could make someone's morning a little better with a warm smile and a hot cup of coffee, it felt good. Around noon, things slowed down enough for Maya to take a short break. She sat in the back booth with a cup of coffee and a piece of toast, her usual lunch. She was counting her tips from the morning when Tony came over with a worried look on his face. "Maya, there's a delivery guy here asking for you," he said, quietly. Maya looked up, confused. Nobody ever sent her anything. "Are you sure it's for me?" The delivery man was standing by the front counter with a large box. "Maya Rodriguez?" he asked. "That's me, but I didn't order anything." The man handed her an electronic pad to sign. "It's paid for. Just need your signature." Maya's hands shook a little as she signed. The box was heavy and had a logo she recognized from expensive stores downtown. Inside was a beautiful coffee machine, the kind she had seen in magazines but never dreamed of owning. "There must be some mistake," she told the delivery man. "I can't afford this." But he just shrugged and left. Maya stared at the machine, not knowing what to do. It was worth more than she made in 2 months. The card attached said, "Happy early birthday, Maya." But there was no name. Tony came over to look. "Well, that's something. You got a secret admirer?" Maya shook her head. "I don't know anyone who could afford this. And how would they know my birthday is next week?" She tried calling the store, but they said the purchase was final and couldn't be returned. The buyer had paid extra to keep their name private. Maya was more confused than ever. That afternoon, while she worked, Maya kept thinking about the coffee machine. She had mentioned to her coworker Lisa just last week that she was tired of making instant coffee at home. She had said it as a joke, complaining about being too tired after double shifts to make real coffee. But now this expensive machine had appeared out of nowhere. The next morning, Maya brought the coffee machine to work. If she couldn't return it, at least everyone at the diner could enjoy good coffee. Tony was impressed with how much better the pour coffee tasted. "You should keep this for yourself," he told her. "I can't accept something this expensive from a stranger," Maya replied. "It doesn't feel right." But the gifts didn't stop. 2 days later, another delivery arrived. This time it was a beautiful leather handbag, soft and well-made, with a rich, brown color that matched everything. Maya had never owned anything so nice. Again, there was just a card saying it was for her birthday. Maya started to feel uncomfortable. Someone was watching her closely enough to know her birthday and what she might need or want. But who? And why? She began paying closer attention to the customers who came into the diner. Most were regulars she had known for months or years. But there was one man who had started coming in about 2 months ago. He always sat in the corner booth, ordered just coffee, and stayed for hours. He was well-dressed in expensive suits and always left a $20 tip for a $3 cup of coffee. The man looked to be in his 50s with gray hair and tired eyes. He never caused trouble or asked for anything special. But Maya noticed that he always seemed to be watching her work. When she looked his way, he would quickly look down at his phone or out the window. Maya asked Lisa about him. "Oh, you mean the rich guy? He's been coming in for a while now. Always sits alone, never talks to anyone, kind of sad, really." "Did he ever ask about me?" Maya wanted to know. Lisa thought about it. "Now that you mention it, he did ask Tony about you once. Something about how long you'd been working here. Tony didn't say much, but he seemed uncomfortable about it." That evening, Maya decided to ask Tony directly. She found him in the kitchen, cleaning the grill for the night. "Tony, who is that man who sits in the corner booth? The one with the expensive suits?" Tony's face changed. He looked nervous and wouldn't meet her eyes. "Just a customer, Maya." "Why do you ask?" "Because someone has been sending me expensive gifts, and I think it might be him. Lisa said he asked about me." Tony wiped his hands on his apron and sighed. "Look, Maya, some things are better left alone. If someone wants to be nice to you, maybe just accept it." But Maya couldn't let it go. "Tony, please. I need to know who this is. What if he's dangerous? What if he wants something from me?" Tony looked at her for a long moment. "He's not dangerous, Maya. I can promise you that. But he's complicated. He asked me not to say anything about him to you." "Why would he do that? If he wants to be nice, why hide?" "Sometimes people have their reasons for staying in the background. Maybe he thinks you wouldn't accept help if you knew where it came from." Maya felt frustrated and scared. She had spent years taking care of herself, being independent. The idea that someone was watching her and sending gifts felt wrong, even if the gifts were nice. The next morning brought another delivery. This time it was a set of expensive art supplies, sketch pads, pencils, paints, and brushes. Maya's heart stopped when she saw them. She loved to draw, but she only did it during her breaks at work, using cheap pencils and whatever paper she could find. Nobody knew about her artwork except the people at the diner who had seen her sketching. This gift was too personal. Someone had been watching her very closely to know about her interest in art. Maya felt her privacy had been violated, even though the intention seemed kind. She decided she had to confront the man in the corner booth. The next time he came in, she would ask him directly if he was the one sending gifts. She deserved to know who was affecting her life this way. As Maya walked home that evening, she thought about her upcoming birthday. She would be 29 years old, and for the first time in her life, someone was making a big deal about it. But instead of feeling happy, she felt confused and a little frightened. Maya had learned early in life that when something seemed too good to be true, it usually was. Free gifts from strangers always came with strings attached. She just had to figure out what this stranger wanted from her before it was too late. Maya woke up the next morning with a plan. She was going to find out who was sending her these gifts, no matter what it took. The art supplies had been the last straw. Someone knowing about her private hobby felt too personal, too invasive. She got ready for work as usual, but her mind was racing. During her walk to the diner, she practiced what she would say to the mysterious man in the corner booth. She would be polite, but firm. She would demand answers. But when she arrived at Tony's diner, there was already another surprise waiting for her. A woman in a business suit was standing by the counter with a clipboard and an envelope. "Are you Maya Rodriguez?" the woman asked, with a professional smile. Maya nodded, feeling her stomach tighten with worry. "I'm from Premier Spa downtown. You've won a full-day package. Massage, facial, the works. Congratulations." Maya stared at the golden certificate in the envelope. It was worth $500. "I didn't enter any contest," she said slowly. The woman's smile never wavered. "Sometimes people enter contests online and forget. Or maybe someone entered for you as a gift. Either way, it's yours. Just call to schedule your appointment." After the woman left, Maya sank into the nearest booth. This was getting out of hand. First the coffee machine, then the handbag, then the arty, supplies, and now a spa day. Someone was spending serious money on her and she had no idea why. Tony came over with a cup of coffee. "Another surprise?" he asked, though his voice didn't sound surprised at all. "Tony, you know something about this. Please, I'm starting to get scared." Tony sat down across from her. His kind face looked troubled. "Maya, I promised someone I wouldn't interfere. But maybe it's time you knew the truth." Before he could say more, the morning rush started. Customers began filling the diner and Maya had to get to work. But throughout the morning, she kept thinking about Tony's words. He knew something. Maybe he knew everything. Around 10 o'clock, the man in the expensive suit walked in. Maya's heart started beating faster. This was her chance. She watched as he took his usual seat in the corner booth and ordered his usual coffee. Maya poured his coffee with shaking hands. As she set the cup down, she took a deep breath. "Excuse me, sir, I need to ask you something." The man looked up at her, and Maya was surprised by his expression. He looked nervous, almost frightened. His eyes were a deep blue color, and there was something familiar about them that she couldn't place. "Yes," he said quietly. "Are you the one who's been sending me gifts?" The man's face went pale. He opened his mouth to speak, then closed it again. For a moment, they just stared at each other. I don't know what you mean," he finally said, but his voice was shaky. "Please don't lie to me. Someone has been sending me expensive things, and I think it's you. I need to know why." The man looked around the diner nervously, as if he was afraid someone might overhear. "I can't talk about this here," he whispered. It's not what you think." "Then tell me what it is," Maya said, her voice getting stronger. "I deserve to know who's watching me and why." The man stood up suddenly, leaving a $20 bill on the table. "I'm sorry," he said. "I never meant to frighten you." And then he was gone, leaving Maya standing there with more questions than ever. The rest of her shift dragged by. Maya couldn't concentrate on her work. She mixed up orders and forgot to refill coffee cups. Her mind kept going back to the look in the man's eyes when she confronted him. He had looked guilty and sad and scared all at the same time. During her lunch break, Maya made a decision. She was going to follow him. If he wouldn't give her answers, she would find them herself. She asked Tony if she could leave a few minutes early. He looked at her with concern, but agreed. Maya quickly changed out of her uniform and waited outside the diner. She didn't have to wait long. The man came out of the office building across the street where Maya now realized he must work. He was talking on his phone and walking quickly toward the downtown area. Maya followed at a distance, trying to look casual. He led her through several blocks of busy streets, past shops and restaurants she had never been able to afford. Finally, he stopped at the entrance of the Grand Plaza Hotel, the fanciest hotel in the city. Maya watched from across the street as he walked through the gleaming glass doors like he belonged there. Maya had never been inside such an expensive place. The lobby was all marble and gold, with crystal chandeliers hanging from the ceiling. She felt out of place in her simple clothes, but she forced herself to walk up to the front desk. "Excuse me," she said to the woman behind the counter. "Could you tell me the name of the man who just came in? Tall, gray hair, blue suit?" The desk clerk looked at her suspiciously. "I'm sorry, but we don't give out information about our guests," Maya thought quickly. "He's my uncle. I was supposed to meet him here, but I forgot his room number." The woman's expression softened slightly. "Are you talking about Mr. Blackstone? He's staying in the penthouse suite." Maya's heart stopped. Blackstone. She had heard that name before, but she couldn't remember where. "Richard Blackstone?" she asked. "Yes, that's right. Would you like me to call up to his room?" "No, that's okay. I'll call him later, thank you." Maya left the hotel in a daze. Richard Blackstone. The name kept repeating in her head as she walked home. Where had she heard it before? As soon as she got to her apartment, Maya grabbed her old laptop and searched for Richard Blackstone. What she found made her sink into her chair in shock. Richard Blackstone was the CEO and founder of Blackstone Technologies, one of the biggest tech companies in the country. He was worth billions of dollars. His picture was on the first page of results, the same man who had been sitting in the corner booth at Tony's Diner. Maya scrolled through article after article about his business success, his charitable donations, his private lifestyle. Then she found something that made her heart stop completely. It was an old interview from 30 years ago, when Richard was just starting his company. The interviewer had asked about his family, and Richard had mentioned having a daughter. "I had a daughter once," he had said, "but I lost touch with her during a difficult time in my life. I think about her every day." The article was dated 28 years ago. Maya had been born 28 years ago. With trembling fingers, Maya searched for more information. She found that Richard Blackstone had grown up in Portland, the same city where her mother had lived. He had attended Jefferson High School, which was the same school her mother had gone to according to the few records Maya had from her childhood. Maya's mother had died when Maya was 7 years old. Before that, they had lived in a tiny apartment, not far from where Maya lived now. Her mother had never talked about Maya's father except to say that he was gone and wouldn't be coming back. Could it be possible? Could Richard Blackstone be her father? Maya spent the next hour reading everything she could find about him. He had never married. He had no other children that anyone knew about. He donated millions of dollars every year to charities that helped foster children and single mothers. Foster children, like Maya had been. The more she read, the more convinced she became. The timing was right, the location was right, and the way he had been watching her at the diner, the expensive gifts, the guilty look in his eyes when she confronted him. It all made sense now. But if Richard Blackstone was her father, why hadn't he contacted her directly? Why was he sneaking around, sending anonymous gifts and watching her from a distance? Maya felt angry and confused and hurt all at the same time. If this man was her father, he had abandoned her when she was a baby. He had let her grow up in foster homes, struggling and alone while he became rich and successful. And now suddenly he wanted to be part of her life? By sending her expensive gifts like that would make up for 28 years of nothing? Maya closed her laptop and paced around her small apartment. She needed to confront him again, but this time she would be prepared. This time she would demand the whole truth. The next morning, Maya called in sick to work. She couldn't concentrate on serving coffee and taking orders when her whole world had been turned upside down. Instead, she went back to the Grand Plaza Hotel. This time, she didn't ask the desk clerk for information. She found a chair in the lobby where she could see the elevators and waited. She was prepared to wait all day if necessary. It was almost noon when Richard Blackstone stepped out of the elevator. He was dressed in another expensive suit and carrying a briefcase. Maya stood up and walked directly toward him. "Mr. Blackstone," she said loudly enough that he couldn't pretend not to hear her. He stopped and turned around. When he saw her, his face went through a series of emotions: surprise, fear, and something that might have been relief. "Maya," he said quietly, "how did you—" "I know who you are," Maya said. "I know you're rich and famous, and I think I know something else too." Richard looked around the busy lobby. "We can't talk here. Please, come upstairs. Let me explain. Everything." For a moment, Maya hesitated. Was it safe to go with him? But then she looked into his eyes again and saw that same sadness she had noticed at the diner. This man wasn't dangerous. He was hiding something. But he wasn't going to hurt her. "Okay," she said, "but I want the truth. All of it." As they rode the elevator up to the penthouse, Maya's hands were shaking. In a few minutes, she might finally learn the truth about her father. After 28 years of wondering and hoping, and trying not to care, she was about to get the answers she had always wanted. The elevator doors opened and Maya stepped into the most beautiful apartment she had ever seen. But she wasn't thinking about the luxury around her. She was thinking about the conversation that was about to change her life forever. The penthouse apartment was like something from a movie. Floor-to-ceiling windows showed the entire city spread out below. The furniture looked expensive but comfortable, and everything was perfectly clean and organized. Maya had never seen anything so fancy in real life. But she wasn't here to admire the view. She stood in the middle of the living room with her arms crossed, waiting for answers. Richard closed the door behind them and gestured toward the couch. "Please, sit down. Would you like something to drink, coffee, water?" "I don't want anything except the truth," Maya said firmly. "Are you my father?" Richard's face crumpled like someone had hit him. He sat down heavily in a chair across from her, suddenly looking much older than his 50-something years. "Yes," he whispered. "Yes, I am." Even though Maya had suspected it, hearing the words out loud hit her like a punch to the stomach. She felt dizzy and had to sit down on the couch. "Why?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "Why did you leave me?" Richard buried his face in his hands. When he looked up, there were tears in his eyes. "It's complicated, Maya. I was young and stupid and scared. I thought I was doing the right thing." "The right thing?" Maya's voice got louder. "The right thing was abandoning your baby daughter, letting her grow up in foster homes while you became rich and famous." "No," Richard said quickly. "God, no, that was never supposed to happen. I never knew about the foster homes until it was too late." Maya stared at him. "What do you mean you didn't know? Where did you think I was?" Richard got up and walked to the window, looking out at the city. "I need to tell you about your mother first, about Elena." Maya's heart jumped. Her mother's name was Elena, but nobody had ever told her much about her. "You knew my mother?" "I loved your mother," Richard said softly. "I was 19 when I met her. She was 18, working at a bookstore near my college. She was the most beautiful person I'd ever seen, not just on the outside, but on the inside too. She was kind and smart and funny. She made me want to be a better person." Maya felt tears starting in her own eyes. Nobody had ever told her these things about her mother. "We were together for 2 years. Richard continued. "I wanted to marry her. When she told me she was pregnant with you, I was scared but also excited. I thought we would be a family." "So what happened?" Maya asked. Richard's voice became bitter. "My father happened. My father was a terrible man, Maya. He was rich and powerful, and he used his money to control people. He controlled me through threats and fear." "What kind of threats?" "When he found out about Elena and the baby, he was furious. He said I was too young to get married, that a poor girl would ruin my future. He threatened to cut me off completely if I didn't break up with her." Maya frowned. "So? You could have gotten a job. Lots of people don't have rich parents." "That's what I should have done," Richard said, turning back to face her. "But my father didn't just threaten me. He threatened Elena and her family too." "What do you mean?" Richard sat back down, his hands shaking slightly. "Elena's mother was sick, cancer. The treatments were expensive and Elena's family couldn't afford them. My father found out about this and made Elena's mother an offer. He would pay for all her medical bills, but only if Elena never saw me. Again. Maya felt cold all over. He paid my mother to leave you? No, it was worse than that. He told Elena that if she didn't stay away from me, he would make sure her mother couldn't get treatment anywhere. He had connections with all the hospitals and doctors in the city. He could have done it. Maya tried to understand what she was hearing. But couldn't you and my mother figure out a way around this? Couldn't you fight back? We tried, Richard said sadly. We met in secret a few times. Elena told me what my father had done. We made plans to run away together, to go somewhere he couldn't find us. But then what? Then my father played his final card. He showed Elena pictures of what had happened to other people who had crossed him. Businesses that had been destroyed, people who had lost their jobs and couldn't find new ones. He convinced her that if she stayed with me, not only would her mother die, but her whole family would suffer. Maya felt sick. So she chose her family over you. She chose to save her mother's life, Richard corrected, and I let her. I was 19 years old and I was terrified of my father. I should have been braver. I should have found a way to protect both of you. What happened after that? Richard's voice became even quieter. Elena disappeared. She quit her job and moved away. I tried to find her, but my father had people watching me. Every time I got close to finding her, he would know about it. He said if I ever contacted Elena again, he would destroy her family completely. Maya wiped tears from her face. So you just gave up? I tried to send money. Richard said desperately. I had lawyers set up anonymous payments that were supposed to go to Elena. I thought if I couldn't be with you both, at least I could make sure you had what you needed. But we never got any money. We were poor. My mother worked 3 jobs just to pay rent. Richard looked confused. That's impossible. I sent thousands of dollars every month for years. Where did it go then? My father, Richard said, his voice full of hatred. He must have intercepted the payment somehow. He had lawyers and accountants who did whatever he told them to do. Maya felt overwhelmed by all this information. How long did this go on? Until I was 25. That's when I finally stood up to him. I started my own company with money I had saved in secret. I told him I was done letting him control my life, and I was going to find you and Elena no matter what he did. And did you find us? Richard's face crumpled again. I hired private investigators. It took them 6 months to track down Elena. But when they found her, he stopped, unable to continue. What? Maya asked, though she was afraid of the answer. She had died 2 years earlier. Cancer, just like her mother. And you? Richard took a shaky breath. You had been in foster care since you were 7 years old. Maya felt like the room was spinning. You mean you could have found me when I was 9? 10? 11? I tried, Richard said urgently. The investigators tried to find you, but you had been moved around so much. Different homes, different schools, and my father was still interfering even though I had cut ties with him. He had contacts everywhere. Every time we got close to finding you, the trail would go cold. How long did you look for me? I never stopped looking, Richard said simply. Even after my investigators said it was hopeless, I kept trying. I hired new people, used new methods. I spent millions of dollars and 20 years of my life trying to find you. Maya stared at him. 20 years? I found you 2 years ago, Richard continued. One of my investigators saw you at the diner. He took a picture and ran it through facial recognition software. The match was 98% certain. So why didn't you just come up to me and introduce yourself? Richard laughed bitterly. What was I supposed to say? Hi, I'm the father who abandoned you 26 years ago, but it's okay because I have a good excuse? I was terrified that you would hate me. I was terrified that I would ruin your life even more than I already had. Maya felt her anger building again. So instead you decided to spy on me? Send me mysterious gifts like some kind of stalker? Know how it looks, Richard said quickly. But I just wanted to help you. I could see that you were struggling, working so hard just to get by. I thought if I could make your life a little easier without bothering you. Without bothering me? Maya stood up, her voice getting louder. You think watching me from across the diner every day wasn't bothering me? You think mysterious expensive gifts weren't bothering me? I was scared. I thought some crazy person was stalking me. Richard stood up too. I'm sorry. I know I handled it wrong. I just didn't know how to approach you. I was afraid you would reject me before I could explain. Maybe I would have, Maya shouted. Maybe I had the right to reject you. You don't get to decide what's best for me anymore. You gave up that right 28 years ago. You're right, Richard said quietly. You're absolutely right. I should have been honest from the beginning. Maya paced around the room, trying to process everything she had heard. Let me get this straight. You're telling me that you loved my mother, wanted to be with us, but your evil father threatened us, so you stayed away. Then you tried to find us for 20 years but couldn't. And now you've been watching me like a creep for 2 years because you were too scared to introduce yourself. That's a harsh way to put it, but yes, that's basically what happened. Maya stopped pacing and looked directly at him. How do I know any of this is true? How do I know you're not just making up a sob story to make yourself look better? Richard walked over to a desk in the corner of the room. He opened a drawer and pulled out a thick folder. I have documents, legal papers about the payments I tried to send, reports from the private investigators, medical records showing when your mother died, pictures of you from when you were little. He opened the folder and showed her a photograph. Maya gasped. It was a picture of her mother holding a baby, Maya herself. Her mother looked so young and happy. I hired someone to take pictures from a distance, Richard explained, before Elena disappeared. I have dozens of them. Maya looked through the folder with shaking hands. There were legal documents with her mother's name on them. There were investigator reports detailing the search for her over the years. There were medical records confirming her mother's death, and there were pictures of her mother, pictures of Maya as a child, pictures that proved Richard had been telling the truth about at least some of his story. I know you have no reason to trust me, Richard said softly, but everything I told you is true. I failed you and your mother in the worst possible way. I've regretted it every day for the past 28 years. Maya sat back down on the couch, overwhelmed by emotions she couldn't name. Part of her wanted to forgive him, to believe that he had tried his best in an impossible situation. But another part of her was still angry, still hurt by all the years of wondering where her father was and why he didn't want her. I need time to think about all this, she said finally. Of course, Richard said immediately. Take all the time you need. I've waited 28 years. I can wait longer if that's what you need. Maya stood up to leave, then turned back to him. One more question. Your father, is he still alive? No, Richard said with satisfaction. He died 10 years ago, alone and miserable, just like he deserved. Maya nodded and walked toward the door. As she reached for the handle, Richard called out to her. Maya, wait. I know you probably don't want to hear this right now, but I need you to know something. I'm proud of you. Despite everything that happened, despite all the ways I failed you, you became an amazing person. You're kind and hardworking and strong. You're everything I hoped you would be. Maya felt tears starting again. Without turning around, she opened the door and left. As she rode the elevator down to the lobby, Maya felt like her whole life had been turned upside down. Everything she thought she knew about her past was wrong. Her father hadn't abandoned her because he didn't want her. He had been kept away by threats and fear and his own weakness. But did that make it better or worse? Maya wasn't sure. All she knew was that she needed time to figure out how she felt about having a billionaire father who had been watching her serve coffee for 2 years. The elevator doors opened, and Maya stepped out into the busy hotel lobby. She had a lot of thinking to do. Maya didn't go back to work for 3 days. She called Tony and told him she was sick, which wasn't really a lie. She felt sick to her stomach every time she thought about her conversation with Richard. Her whole life felt like it had been built on lies and missing pieces. She spent those 3 days walking around the city, thinking. She walked past the foster homes where she had lived as a child. She walked past her mother's old apartment building. She walked past the high school where her parents had met 30 years ago. Everything looked different now that she knew the truth. On the fourth day, Maya decided to do some research of her own. She went to the public library and used their computers to look up everything she could find about Richard Blackstone and his father. What she found surprised her. Richard's father, William Blackstone, had been famous for being ruthless in business. There were dozens of newspaper articles about companies he had destroyed and people he had ruined. One article called him the most feared businessman in the city. Maya also found court records showing that several people had sued William Blackstone over the years. Most of the cases had been settled quietly, but the details that were public painted a picture of a man who used threats and intimidation to get what he wanted. Richard's story was starting to make more sense. His father really had been the kind of person who would destroy a young woman's family to control his son. Maya also looked up information about Richard's business. She found articles about the charities he supported. Over the past 15 years, he had donated over $50 million to organizations that helped foster children. He had also started a foundation that provided college scholarships for kids who had aged out of the foster system. Kids like Maya. She found one interview where Richard talked about his charitable work. "I believe every child deserves a chance," he had said. "Too many kids fall through the cracks of the system. If I can help even a few of them build better lives, then maybe some good can come from my own mistakes." Maya stared at the computer screen. Richard had been trying to help kids, like her, for years. Was this his way of dealing with the guilt about abandoning her? She dug deeper and found something that made her hands shake. 3 years ago, Richard's foundation had paid for the college education of 2 kids from Maya's old foster home. Kids she had lived with when she was 14. He had been helping her foster siblings without them even knowing who he was. Maya left the library feeling more confused than ever. Richard wasn't just some rich man trying to buy forgiveness. He had been quietly helping people for years, people who reminded him of the daughter he couldn't find. When Maya finally went back to work, Tony was waiting for her with a worried expression. "Are you okay?" he asked. "You sounded terrible on the phone." Maya poured herself a cup of coffee and sat down at the counter. "Tony, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." Tony nodded. "How long have you known who Richard Blackstone is?" Tony's face fell. "About 6 months. He came to me one day and told me everything. He asked me not to tell you." "Why didn't you?" "Because he asked me not to interfere. He said he wanted to find the right way to approach you himself. And honestly, Maya, I could see how much pain he was in. This isn't some rich guy playing games. This is a man who's been suffering for almost 30 years. Maya stirred her coffee thoughtfully. "What do you think I should do?" "I think you should give him a chance," Tony said gently. "Not because he's rich or because he's your father, but because he seems like a good man who made a terrible mistake when he was young. But what if I can't forgive him? What if every time I look at him I just think about all the years I spent wondering why my father didn't want me?" Tony reached across the counter and patted her hand. "Maya, you've been angry about this for 28 years. Has the anger made you happy?" Maya shook her head. "Then maybe it's time to try something different. Maybe it's time to see if forgiveness feels better than anger." That evening, Maya made a decision. She called the Grand Plaza Hotel and asked to speak to Richard Blackstone. "Maya?" Richard's voice sounded hopeful and scared at the same time. "I want to meet you again," Maya said. "But not at your hotel. Meet me at Tony's Diner tomorrow at 3 o'clock. That's my world. If we're going to talk, we do it on my terms." "Of course," Richard said immediately. "I'll be there." The next afternoon, Maya watched Richard walk into the diner. He looked nervous and out of place in his expensive suit among the working-class customers. But he sat down in a booth and waited patiently for her to finish serving her other tables. When Maya finally sat down across from him, she had prepared what she wanted to say. "I've been thinking about everything you told me," she began, "and I've done some research on my own." Richard nodded, waiting. "I found out about your charity work, about the kids from my foster home that you helped pay for college." Richard looked Surprised. How did you find out about that? Does it matter? The point is, you've been trying to help kids like me for years. Kids who got abandoned and forgotten by the system. It never felt like enough, Richard said quietly. No matter how much money I gave away, it never made up for failing you. Maya leaned forward. Here's what I don't understand. If you felt so guilty about leaving me, why didn't you try harder to find me? You're rich and powerful. Couldn't you have done more? Richard was quiet for a long moment. You want the complete truth? Yes. For the first few years after you disappeared into foster care, I told myself that you were better off without me. I convinced myself that some nice family would adopt you and give you a better life than I could. I was still young and selfish, and it was easier to believe that than to face what I had done. Maya felt her anger rising again. So you gave up on me? Yes, Richard said simply. For about 5 years I gave up. I buried myself in building my business and tried not to think about you. But then, when I was 30, I met a little girl at a charity event. She was about 7 years old, the same age you would have been when your mother died. She was in foster care and she asked me if I knew where her daddy was. Richard's voice broke a little. That's when it hit me. You were out there somewhere, maybe asking the same question, maybe wondering why your father didn't care enough to find you. That's when I started looking for you seriously. Maya felt some of her anger fade. And it took you 18 years to find me? The foster system is complicated. Kids get moved around. Records get lost or sealed. And my father was still interfering even after I cut him off. He had contacts everywhere and he made sure doors got closed in my face. But you kept trying. I never stopped. Even when my investigators told me it was hopeless, I kept looking. Finding you became the most important thing in my life. Maya studied Richard's face. She could see the truth in his eyes, the pain that had been eating at him for decades. Okay, she said slowly. Let's say I believe all of this. Let's say I accept that you tried your best in a bad situation. What happens now? Do you expect me to just forget about the past and be your daughter? I don't expect anything, Richard said quickly. I have no right to expect anything from you. But I hope maybe we could start over. Maybe we could get to know each other. What would that look like? I don't know. Whatever feels right to you. We could meet for coffee sometimes. We could talk on the phone. We could take it as slow as you want. Maya was quiet for a few minutes, thinking. Finally, she spoke. I have some conditions. Anything. First, no more expensive gifts. I don't want your money and I don't want to feel like you're trying to buy forgiveness. Agreed. Second, I'm not going to call you dad or father or anything like that. Not yet anyway. Maybe not ever. You're Richard until I decide otherwise. I understand. Third, I want to keep working here at the diner. This job means something to me. These people are my family. I don't want your money to change my life. Richard nodded. I respect that. And fourth, if I decide I can't handle this, if it's too hard or too painful, I want to be able to walk away. No guilt trips, no pressure, no trying to change my mind. Of course. Maya took a deep breath. Okay then, let's try this. But we start small. Maybe you can come here for coffee sometimes. Maybe we can talk about normal things, not just the past. A smile spread across Richard's face. The first real smile Maya had seen from him. I'd like that very much. Over the next few months, Richard became a regular customer at Tony's diner. But instead of sitting alone in the corner booth, he sat at the counter, where he could talk to Maya during slow periods. They talked about books and movies and current events. They talked about Maya's artwork and Richard's business. Slowly, carefully, they began to build a relationship. Richard learned that Maya loved old movies and could draw portraits that looked like photographs. Maya learned that Richard had taught himself to cook because he got tired of eating alone in fancy restaurants. It wasn't always easy. Sometimes Maya would look at Richard and feel angry all over again about the lost years. Sometimes Richard would try too hard to make up for the past and Maya would have to remind him of her boundaries. But gradually they found their rhythm. On Maya's 29th birthday, Richard didn't send expensive gifts to her apartment. Instead, he came to the diner with a small wrapped box. Inside was a simple silver locket. When Maya opened it, she found two pictures, one of her mother as a young woman, and one of Maya herself as a baby. "I thought you might want to have these," Richard said quietly. "They're the only pictures I have of us as a family." Maya felt tears in her eyes as she looked at the photos. Her mother looked so happy and young. Maya herself looked like any other baby, small and innocent and loved. "Thank you," Maya whispered. "This is perfect." As Maya fastened the locket around her neck, she realized something had changed. For the first time in her life, she felt like she belonged somewhere. She had Tony and the other people at the diner who cared about her. And now she had Richard, not as the father who had abandoned her, but as a man who was trying every day to earn her trust and forgiveness. It wasn't the family she had dreamed of as a child, but it was real and it was hers, and maybe that was enough.